are many organizations combing through data and innovation to help us live better lives, from holding hackathons to holding government officials accountable for how they use technology.
Well, as we continue our theme week, Brooklyn Beyond Science and Tech, we're joined by two groups that are raising awareness of how technology can help improve our lives. Noel Hidalgo, Executive Director of beta.nyc, which is the nation's largest open government and civic technology meetup. Welcome to BK Live.
Thank you.
And Dan Kass, co-founder and executive director of JustFix.nyc. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start the conversation. beta.nyc, can you tell us a little bit about what is civic technology and design?
Sure. So civic technology is a very broad term that's used to encapsulate people that are using their professional skills, primarily around technology, data analytics, or design skills, to build tools to improve their neighborhoods. Sometimes it gets distorted. Some people have said that PayPal is a civic technology company because you can pay your parking tickets that way. Airbnb is a civic technology company because you can connect with your neighbors. Yeah. Some of us, like myself, have a more conservative definition, and we look at organizations like JustFix as a true civic technology company. So we're really working to address problems within neighborhoods and working with community-based organizations to really address those issues.
So he opened the door for you there. JustFix. Aren't you concerned with making money and getting the next big app? You're using your powers for good.
That's kind of what my parents ask me on a regular basis. Well, you know, we really take that idea of civic technology to heart, knowing that, you know, it's not necessarily how technology has always been used or how it's been thought about in these big, you know, like you said, first world problems or on big, you know, Silicon Valley, you know, corporations. We're trying to really champion this idea of community-based technology, like Noel said. So with JustFix, our mission is technology for housing justice here in New York. You know, goes without saying that New Yorkers and housing, there's a lot of issues. Gentrification is at an all-time high. One of the main sort of mechanisms that tenants are really, you know, from low-income communities, working-class communities are being displaced are through issues of repair and harassment by landlords where...
Lack of repair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Disrepair, neglect, and there's really a little accountability towards the landlords in that process, and that's really what we're working to address.
Well, how does JustFix.nyc work?
Yeah. So, you know, again, technology-based. We have two main sort of products and services. One is what New Yorkers will use directly. It's a web app. It's available in English and Spanish, and it walks you through the process in the most legally sort of admissible way of building a strong case against your bad landlord. So we'll bring in data from the city. You sort of will go conduct a room-by-room checklist. We'll cross-reference that with what we know about your building and your landlord. Give you a personalized plan of attack, so knowing, you know, the complex web of agencies to really deal with. Right. And then it's really a documentation tool. So you're uploading photos. You know, these are things that you're already, you know, if you had a repair issue, already taking pictures of it. And we'll do that so you can actually use those photos as evidence in housing court and present as strong a case as possible. Right. Because the vast majority of tenants, you know, folks don't know this until you're in housing court, but you don't have an attorney. You're not guaranteed an attorney.
I'm going to follow up with you with that because I was really shocked. It says 90% of tenants do not have representation in housing court, while 90% of the landlords do. And then getting back to that, it says that the success rate for an unrepresented, unassisted tenant in housing court is currently around 10%. But you guys are doing a lot better with that. Can you tell us about impact?
Yeah, so, you know, we're really focused on two major categories. The first is that, you know, if you have, you know, you bring, it's a classic sort of story, you know, one of the things that features that tenants can really do through the app is they'll get a legally sort of really, you know, formatted sort of letter that they notice that they can send to their landlord, you know, and it's almost like scare tactics, right? You show your landlord that you're keeping a, you know, good documentation, you have a strong case, that almost always will bring them to the table or at least get them to start answering your calls. Yeah. The second half is really augmenting the work of our partner organizations. So we're partnered with tenant organizing groups all over the city. Our second product, you know, that was sort of the first one that tenants use directly. The second one is a dashboard product for community organizers, for legal services, to help them manage these cases on a much larger scale. big group cases. And once you have more of a power in numbers, you bring that together and are able to really pass it off in a way that the community groups can really run with and make them more effective, then you get, we've already seen a lot of results from that.
So Noel, when we talk about tenants' rights and advocacy, there aren't usually a lot of technology people sitting around the table. And the work that you've been doing at beta.nyc, there's so many points of entry for folks to find things like this app or just gather information. So what is the point of entry for people who might be struggling with an issue but may not be aware that people are trying to technology their way out of it?
Well, so right now, this is kind of we're operating as a bridge. beta.nyc works to demystify kind of this world. We want to connect people to opportunity, whether it's a community-based organization or if it's a bunch of technologists who are interested in actually using their services for good. We're starting to, for the last few years, we've held a number of different sessions through Beta Talks, which you can check them out on our YouTube channel, where we essentially talk about these particular issues and who are the policies, what are the people, what's the opportunity for you as an general individual who has really no experience in these particular technological issues. Here's a way for you to come and learn, empower yourself, and hopefully engage with those types of organizations. In the past, we've drafted and have supported 13 pieces of legislation to go into council. 7 of them have actually been passed. In 2013, we wrote a People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City, and out of that 34 ideas, 8 of them have been turned into public-private partnerships. And so we really act as an enabler. We have a lot of content up on our YouTube page. We have a number of events, and then we also do advocacy, trying to really just foster all of this network coming together.
So what's one of the things that folks might recognize? Are you responsible for all these Link NYC kiosks that are popping up all over the city? Or did beta.nyc help to change the city?
So we are a member of the Transparency Working Group, which is a coalition of good government groups and progressive organizations that are really fighting for government accountability and transparency. We helped get the city's open data law passed. A few years ago, we got the City Record, which is the most important newspaper you've probably never read, but if you worked in city government, you know all about it. If you're a property developer, you know all about it. If you're a business, you know all about it. But you would have had to pay thousands of dollars to get this piece of newspaper, this PDF sent to you. And so we lobby the city to get that up online for free in a way that you can now subscribe to it via an email. The things that we have made an impact on are NYC's big apps. So NYC's big apps started off as an apps competition to build small businesses and to use the city's open data. And in 2013, we pushed and lobbied and got the city to change big apps to now focus on solving civic problems. And JustFix happens to be one of those winners.
Very good.
You know, the more I watch television and look at the national news, I can definitely see how in so many ways, being engaged with BK Live and talking to the good people here, how New York City is sort of at the forefront of this. But as the administration, this new presidency has come into play, how do you feel it sort of plays out on a national level, this access to information?
Oh, well, yeah, that's actually kind of a very frustrating issue.
Because it says beta.nyc,
yeah,
not beta
Actually,
America.
Just today, in fact, the White House used to have an open data site that got pulled down, I think, within the past day or so. And you saw, after the inauguration, there was tons of folks, especially around climate data, who are from the civic tech community, who really mobilized in preserving that data, continuing to make sure that it remains publicly accessible. So I think one of the most interesting elements that we're exploring with civic tech is that it's both within and from the outside. We have folks within government who are really championing a lot of these policies. But then there are folks who remain, in terms of accountability, in terms of transparency, who can sort of be watchdogs in that process.
I have to say, it's not just a federal issue, right? So currently we have a federal administration that seems to be not believing in science and not believing in data and just believing in emotion, right, which is a type of government that we've seen before and we'll probably see over and over again. But we also have a state administration and a governor who openly threw out the Westmoreland Commission that was, looking at their own problems and issues. We have a mayor who doesn't want to take questions from the press when it comes down to domestic terrorism issues, and he wants to stay on subject. So there are a number of issues that intersect, whether it's at the hyperlocal level, from community boards all the way up to the mayoral, to the state, to the federal, that it's about a level of vigilance that involves technologists, that involves designers, involves community-based organizations to hold government accountable, right? Government is done by the consent of the people. Well, we have to really make sure that we're consenting for this government to exist.
So as we sit here right now, what do each of you believe is the biggest threat to having these open forums and just open accountability between the information that's present and our access to it?
So we work with the Manhattan Borough President to build the city's first open data curriculum. And so if you go back to our YouTube page, there's 7 hours of videos that you can watch that essentially walk you through the very first rungs of what it's like to experience New York City's open data. That is then combined with 35 hours of lab work that essentially orient you in regards to civics and data and census data and how a community board works and how you can bring those things together. And so one of our fears is that we fight for this information transparency and nobody uses this information, that we continue to exist in a world where government is an ephemeral, an emotional response. I believe in this and I believe in that, but not really grounded in truth or information. Now, we know data has a bias to it, but we want to start seeing where those biases are and how do we use them to really effectively govern and address the inequalities and the injustices that our communities have.
Can you tell us about the School of Data conference coming up? I know that's coming up soon.
So it actually just happened.
Okay.
It's in celebration with the anniversary of the city's open data law. So it's tied to the beginning of March every single year. We just had our second one. This is our 10th citywide event that we've had. We have all of those videos also up on our YouTube.
And what was the takeaway from this year's conference?
The takeaway is that we are once again back in this bridging environment. We have issues where people want to use technology to solve problems, and sometimes they create unintended consequences. And so how, Link.NYC, it's great that we have fast, free internet everywhere across the city, but that comes at the expense of having our data that's being sold, cameras being installed, microphones being installed in our different communities that are potentially monitoring us every single day of the week. We have applications that are being used to solve different types of injustices within the criminal justice system, but yet the bias and the system itself is biased, so therefore, the technology isn't really going to be addressing the injustices of the bias of the racist system. So,
So Dan,
yeah.
you were also at the conference. What was your takeaway? What should we be aware of marching out of there, whether it's a new app or the injustice?
Right. Well, so we actually spoke at the School of Data conference with some other partner organizations. For JustFix, again, our mission here is housing justice. And so we're working, the tentative working title right now is it's a housing data coalition. So you have really big companies like Property Shark that are really working on the real estate side, tenant screening services that they use a lot of open public data for big, multi-million-dollar businesses to give landlords an advantage. And for a lot of our partners in these community groups, they don't have the same access to that data or able to do the same analysis. So we're bringing together a coalition. It's us, it's these community groups, folks within, the Attorney General's office, for example, who also uses this data to analyze cases, to sort of present an opposing front to that, to give the same tools that big real estate uses in the hands of tenant advocates in order to really mobilize their communities.
All right, so before we get out of here, give us each thing that we should download now besides JustFix. Is there an application that could improve my civic life or output putting you on the spot in the last 30 seconds. No.
Yeah. I mean, if you're interested in this type of world, there's a series of workshops that are going on right now through the city's Big Apps competition, bigapps.nyc. This year, if you're interested in understanding how to build an application, they've gone through and built a number
just
of
give me an
workshops.
app, man.
No, but the world, it's knowledge. It's knowledge. Knowledge is the app, man.
Knowledge is power, and sharing that information is what you guys do, and we really appreciate you. We're out of time, so you guys are just going to have to come back and share with us. So we got to catch them on the interwebs. We got to catch them on the interwebs.
JustFix.nyc.
JustFix.
And there we go. Thank you.
Best parking if you're interested in parking. The
I don't
alternate
drive.
side.
I don't drive.
Get a bike. That's
City Bike app, then the City Bike app.
City Bike app.